Hi folks, it's Matt from all over the lake. In this video, I'm going to try to help those of you who are struggling to find morel mushrooms. I'm hoping this video can help everybody, no matter what your skill level is. In this video, I'm going to give you my top secret tips on how I find consistently, year after year, hundreds to even thousands of morel mushrooms. And it didn't used to be this way. I used to go and struggle, and I would find 3 to 15 morel mushrooms a season, and sometimes go multiple years without finding a single morel mushroom. And I finally got to the point that I said, I'm going to dedicate myself to finding morel mushrooms, because I know there are individuals that just every year fill up bucketfuls, barrelfuls, and truckloads of morel mushrooms. And I thought, if these people can do it, I can do it. And if I can do it, you can do it. So hopefully my tips will help you to find more morel mushrooms than ever before. All the information I'm about to share with you is based on my own personal experiences. Now, these are regional tips, so they apply to my region, and I'm right here in Kansas City, and so these should help you in your area, but they're more applicable to where I'm located. But I think that these tips can even help you whether you're in France or Italy or Georgia or Canada. They're going to be more useful in my region, but I think they're going to still help you no matter where you're located. First thing we're going to cover is, technically, morel mushrooms aren't mushrooms. I know when I first started really studying morel mushrooms, I realized there's a lot of false information out there that people believe. And so I had to decipher between the things that were false and figure out the things that were true. And these things I really believe can help you to find more morel mushrooms. People constantly will leave comments in my videos and telling me, don't pull them out of the ground, don't pull them up by the root. And morel mushrooms don't have roots. So what you're saying doesn't make any sense. The best way to describe it is a morel mushroom is the fruiting body of a plant. And we can just simplify that even and just say that they're more like the flower of a plant. So underground you've got mycelium, and it's kind of a spiderwebby looking substance is the best way to describe it. It kind of looks like kind of a cottony kind of a growth, and from this will shoot up and then form the fruiting body, which is the morel mushroom. And so there's not really any plants out there that you can cut a flower and it reflowers from the exact spot that it flowered. It sends up a new shoot and sends up a new flower. So I don't think it doesn't matter if you cut them or if you pull them or any of that stuff. It doesn't affect the morel mushrooms. And this mycelium will form in the ground from a spore, and an area then can produce morel mushrooms for anywhere from around 3 to 7 years. So they're not always going to grow in the same spot. It's a limited amount of time that you're going to find them where you find them. And I believe, and this is just from my experience, I think the first year that it produces, or at least the second year, is the best year. So if you find 50 of them in one spot, chances are you may find 20 in that spot the next year, and then 10, and then 1, and then you're never going to find them again in that spot. But hopefully from the spores and them coming up in that area close by in the next years, hopefully you'll find some more morel mushrooms. You can actually get on eBay and buy a spore bundle, which is a clump of dirt that has the mycelium in it, and plant it in your backyard. But if there aren't proper nutrients, you might get 1, 2, or 3, and that's it, and you're out 20 or 25 bucks. So a big key is location. The first reason you're not finding morel mushrooms is you're not looking hard enough. One thing that I've done over the last few years to constantly find morel mushrooms is there's not a day in the spring that I don't get out in the woods for 20 or 30 minutes looking for morels. I suggest, no matter how tired you are, when you get off work, to get out and give 15, 20 minutes and look. Another thing I do is I get up extra early at 5 in the morning, and I jump in the woods from 6 to 6:30 before I've got to head to work in the morning. And I'll get out first thing in the morning, and I get up extra early just to make sure my spots, I'm finding the morel mushrooms and other people aren't. because a lot of the places I go to, most of the places I go to, are public parks. And I know hundreds of other people search these places, and yet I'm still successful year after year. And it's because of my dedication. And there's a lot of people out there who are more dedicated than you, and they're looking way harder than you. And there's a good chance that by the time you show up to the woods, they already went through there and they filled up bagfuls, bucketfuls, barrelfuls, and truckfuls while you were at home asleep. So definitely get out and look more and be more dedicated. And if you become dedicated, just like I did, you can be that person filling up bags and buckets and barrels. Tip number 2, you're looking in the wrong habitats. So I've been looking for morels for almost 40 years. And the first 20 years, I wasn't very successful. I'd find a few here and there, and that's about it. But I found from checking hundreds and hundreds of locations that there are certain places that just really don't produce morel mushrooms. Every set of woods can produce morel mushrooms. I found them growing out of a gravel road. I found them growing on rock piles. I found them in the middle of fields with grass, all grass, and no trees anywhere around. So I found them in every type of situation that you can possibly imagine. But when I found them growing out of a gravel road, it was one morel. It wasn't hundreds of them. But there are certain locations that tend to produce more morels than others. I'm not an expert at trees. Some years I find them under evergreens, and some years I find them around elm trees, and some years I find them around ash trees. A lot of people like to target American elm, slippery elm, tulip poplar, sycamore trees, white ash, green ash, and black cherry trees are all trees that will produce an abundance of morel mushrooms. And it changes for me from year to year. Some years I'm finding them around the elm trees, and other years I'm finding them around sycamore trees. Every single year is different, and they're going to be in different places every year. And I recommend anytime you ever find morel mushrooms to remember that location and to always go back there year after year, because I've had places where I found a ton of morel mushrooms, and then I came back the next year and found less, and then a decade went by and I never found any more morel mushrooms in the area. And then finally one year, the humidity was right, the moisture was right, the temperature was right, and suddenly there was a bunch back in that place that had been dormant for many, many years. I saw a comment on Facebook today where a gentleman said, for the 3rd year in a row, I'm going to go out to my dad's farm and not find anything. And my thoughts were, then you shouldn't be looking there. And not to say don't go to that location, but that is probably a location that just really doesn't produce very many morel mushrooms. And if I go to a new place that I've never been before, if I don't find a morel mushroom within 15 to 20 minutes, I leave, because I know that this is not a good set of woods. And I can find 100 morel mushrooms in this park, and I can drive 10 minutes down the road to another park that seems very similar habitat-wise, and there are no mushrooms here. When you watch the news in the morning and you watch the Weather Channel, you'll see it's 46 degrees here and it's 51 degrees here. So depending on how high up in elevation and the amount of leaf cover even on the ground holds heat into the ground, and even the type of soil. I noticed that early on in the season, I find morel mushrooms in sandy soil because I think that rock holds on, those little pieces of sand hold heat into the ground, and those areas produce morel mushrooms sooner. So I look in different habitats early in the season, and maybe his dad's farm is a good place, but maybe he's looking too early in the year because certain areas produce morels at a different time because there are many species of morel. That brings me to point number 3. Your timing is off. That gentleman that was looking at his dad's farm, he might be looking too early or too late. I usually check a spot, and then I come back 5 to 7 days later and I check that spot again, because morel mushrooms do grow. And I have a video where I went out and I found some morel mushrooms, and I came back a week later and show you that here's the morel and now here's the morel. And a morel mushroom can live up to 21 days. And so you've got a 3-week growing period. So maybe you're too early, or maybe you are too late and they've died. Because of the various species of morel mushrooms, And I'll just break it down to around here, I've got yellows and I've got what I call grays, and I really don't get very many of the black species. I get a few of them here and there in a couple of my locations. Here in Kansas City, I don't find a lot of them. Maybe you do. Maybe you're in this location, and if you are, hey, let me know. But in my area, I find the yellows early on in sandy soil, then I get the early grays, and then I get the late season big yellows, is what I typically find here in Kansas City. You might be looking in the right place, but you just might be looking at the wrong time. Well, I would say check out your dad's farm, give it 20-30 minutes. If you find nothing, wait a week and check it again, wait a week, check it again, wait a week, check it again. Around here in Kansas City, I'd say I get probably about a 5 to 6 week period where morel mushrooms are out. Maybe you're not sure of when prime season is in your location, but you can definitely get on Facebook and you can see people selling morels on Facebook Marketplace and posting those things. I always look for 3 nights above 50 degrees, as low as 45, but especially if I can get 3 nights where the low stays above 50 degrees, they form in the ground, and then after that they grow. So I give it a week after those 3 warm nights. Now, that kind of brings me into my 4th tip, is that maybe you're looking at the right time, and maybe you're looking in the right location, but maybe it's too dry. Morel mushrooms love moisture. You don't find fungus growing out in the middle of deserts. So a nice wet spring really helps the morel mushrooms. I tend to like to look on hillsides, at the bottom of hillsides, in valleys, on creek edges, places that hold moisture. You know, at cornfields, at the bottom of the cornfield where there's a tree row and all that moisture runs down that cornfield and hits that tree row. And sometimes just that little bitty tree row, I'll find 100 morel, 200 morels, 300 morel mushrooms in a little piece of trees. And then other times I'll go to giant areas of forest and you just don't find anything. That brings me to my 5th tip. The 5th reason why you're not finding morel mushrooms is you haven't developed the search image. And what I mean by that is the first morel mushroom is always the hardest morel mushroom to find. If you've ever been out hunting for morel mushrooms, you'll know what I'm talking about. Maybe you still have never found that very first morel mushroom and you realize, yeah, you're right, Matt. Finding that first morel is the hardest thing ever. But once you find that first morel, because there's so many species, you know what to look for. So sometimes I'm looking for a medium gray, a dark gray, a almost black, or a lighter yellow. And depending on the color of the leaves, they will blend in greatly. And I kind of developed that this is what I'm looking for, because they're kind of camouflaged. And once I find that first morel, then suddenly it's like, wow, I found one. Oh, there's another, wow, there's another. And suddenly you've got 5 or 10 in an area, and then you go through the rest of the woods. I've walked into the woods and walked way back into the woods and not saw a single morel. And then when I found one, after 15 minutes, when I walked back out, I found all the morels that I walked right past on my way in because I hadn't developed the search image. Everybody checks the very front section of the park, and I know that, and I walk past the beginning part of the park. Sometimes I'm at the right time and no one's been in that park and I don't get very far in and I realize this park is loaded, and there are public parks that I found 200 and 300 in public parks where I know tons of people go there. I've walked out of parks and had backpackfuls and I see 20 people mushroom hunting and everyone has 2 or 3 in a bag and they're like, hey, did you do any good? And I'm like, oh, I found a couple. And me and my kids and my buddy, all of our backpacks are jam full of morel mushrooms. The number 6 reason you're not finding morel mushrooms is someone beat you to them. Maybe you're looking at the right time. Maybe you're looking at the right location. Maybe there's the right amount of moisture, but maybe you're showing up Saturday morning after you worked all week, and I was there Friday after work and I've already picked them all. So when I say you're not looking hard enough, you're dealing with, number 1, those people that really get out there, and that's me. I really make sure that I'm gonna pick all those morel mushrooms. So you might be looking at the right place, at the right time, with the right moisture, in the right habitat, but somebody beat you to them. Maybe you've heard that old story about the little engine that could. And when he didn't believe in himself, he couldn't do it. And suddenly, when he believed in himself, he could. And it's kind of like that I've noticed with morel mushrooms. I have this supreme confidence in myself that I will out mushroom hunt 90% of people. Many of you guys watching this video are probably a way better mushroom hunter than me. Maybe you find thousands of them and you were just curious. I wonder what this person says about morels, because you probably think you have way more knowledge than me, and you probably do. I'd recommend getting out as much as you can, as often as you can, and also don't over search a place. I mean, usually if there's morels there, you're gonna find them. I'd recommend searching multiple places, and if you search a place and you strike out, I'd still go back and check it a week later. And I've learned that there are just certain areas that produce more mushrooms or less mushrooms. So you want to try to avoid those areas that produce less mushrooms. So if you get into a set of woods and you're not finding morels within 15 or 20 minutes, I mean, do I really want to go through and spend 4 hours in these woods to come out of here with 2 or 3 mushrooms? No, I'm going to try to move on and go find a better location where I'm going to be more successful with my time. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope you learned something today. If you'd like to support the channel, please hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and leave a comment. When you leave a comment, it tells YouTube, I like this video so much I want to interact with it. So let me know down in the comments where you're located, and if you've got tips for other people, maybe some things that I didn't cover in this video, share them in the comment section, please. I'm still learning myself. Please consider becoming a channel member if you'd like to see more videos like this. And at the very least, you could share this video on social media with your friends and family, and that would help my channel to grow too. So I appreciate your support, and I hope this was helpful. Good luck to you this season. I hope you find all the mushrooms in the woods. Thanks for watching.